welcome to the vegan double chocolate cookies that are on my website. I'm just going to run through the steps just to make it really clear what the steps are. It's really simple, it's a really easy recipe, it's quick and it doesn't take too much knowledge of what you're doing. I've got butter here, which I've just gotten out, obviously plant-based butter. You need to make sure this is really cold before you start. So I've only just got it out of the fridge and it's the last thing I'm measuring. You can go through the steps and measure as you go, which is what I usually do. I'm a really messy cook, but just for the purpose of this video, I've got it all sorted out ready. Okay, let me just measure this into a bowl and we can get started. Right, so just to go through the ingredients that we've got down here, we have got 150 grams of vegan butter, 80 grams of caster sugar, and 80 grams of soft light brown sugar. 225 grams of vegan chocolate. You can use chips or you can use a bar that's cut up like I've done. Over here we've got all of our dry ingredients apart from the sugars. So we've got 115 grams of self-raising flour, 100 grams of plain flour, 35 grams of cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, all in there. Okay, so you can just mix those all together. I don't sieve them, it's just personal preference. I don't think you need to. Here we've got soya milk, just a tablespoon. Here we've got vegetable oil, about 50 grams, same as 1/4 of a cup. I use 1/4 of a cup just because it's easier than weighing it out. So we're going to start. So what you need to first do is pop all that into there. Now if you're using a K-mix, which I'm not going to do today, or an electric whisk, whatever, it's good to beat up this butter a little bit, just so it breaks up. But using the traditional, I'm just going to put the sugar straight in with it and mix them two together instead. So just sort of make sure your butter's covered by the sugar. You're not going to cream, okay? You don't want it to be light or fluffy. You just want it so that these have been mixed in a bit with each other. So right, that looks fine. So now we're going to add our chocolate to the mix. Just wash all of that in. Make sure you get every last drop because the chocolate is the key feature here. We're going to just push that about, make it look even. Again, don't over mix it. This is not a recipe where you need to mix a lot. Right. So we've got that in there. I'm going to now put in all of this. Just pop it all in the top. Like I said earlier, we don't need to sieve it. Ooh. Getting a fog. So don't need to sieve that, you just put it in. Okay, just gonna mix it through. Oh, bit out the side, don't worry about that. So just get it so that you've combined it. It's gonna seem very dry because it is. We haven't added any liquid yet really, apart from the butter at the beginning, so expect it to be like this for now. And then when we add this, it's like adding the egg, so it will just combine everything. So now that we've done that, we're just going to pop these in. You don't need to make a well, just pop them in. Okay, don't worry if it looks a bit separated when you do that, it'll all work out fine. Right, this is the bit where you need to mix a little bit more because you need to make sure it's all gone all the way through out. You can see it's getting a little bit more wet now. Just keep it going. See, we're nearly there with the mixture. Got to make sure all of this dry bit becomes wet, so that it becomes sort of like it's coming together. As you can see, it's coming away from the bowl. It's starting to clump. Make sure all of that flour is included. All the dry has become this lovely brown colour. You can also, later we're going to be using our hands a little bit. Let me just get a spoon to get that off. We're going to be using our hands a little bit, so it doesn't matter if it's not all completely combined because we're going to be squishing it a little bit later on anyway. So that, to me, looks about right. It's not over mixed. Right, so just scrape that off. Make sure you've got all that you need, because there is no waste in this recipe. Right, just going to put these over to one side for washing up later. Right, so nice, moist, lovely, together mixture. I'm going to put that over to one side. Now what you want to do is get a baking tray. Ignore the fact that this is very dirty and worn. Not dirty, just stained, and it's got flour on it for some reason. Anyway, this is the only one that fits in my freezer, and these cookies do go in the freezer before they get cooked for about 90 minutes. So just be warned that if you want cookies in 5 minutes, you're gonna need to not do this recipe, because these take a little bit more patience. So what we're gonna do, just grab your baking paper. So one thing in baking I've never got my head around is tearing the baking paper. Right, so just put that over there like that, and then put that to one side, like so. So now I'm gonna grab this, move these out the way, grab your scales, which are here. For me, move this a bit closer to yourself. Right, I'm just gonna grab a little bit of baking paper, just cut a little bit out. This is just plainly because I don't want things sticking, and just pop it on there, halfway around, there we go. And just pop that on your scales. Okay, so make sure you've got nice and washed hands. I'm going to take my rings off, because I don't want them getting mucky. Right, so what you're going to do, turn your scales on. Okay, make sure you're in grams. And I'm going to do about 50 gram balls. You can do bigger, but make sure that you change, so just portion that into balls like that. Just make sure that you change your freezer and cooking time to counteract it. So that's only 30 grams, so we need to add a bit more. So this usually makes around 12 cookies, but sometimes it makes more, that's fine. 54, you can get a little bit more than you need. Usually makes actually about 16 if I'm sparing with the extra bits. You do get a little bit mucky, right? Just take a little bit of that one off. And you're just placing them on your baking tray. Now, it's not for somebody that's neat, because you've got to get your hands a little bit dirty. You're just going to copy this move however many times until you have all of your cookies formed. So you've got 15 and a very little one in there, as you can see. We're just going to put these in the freezer for 90 minutes, as I talked about earlier. So just set a timer, go and watch a film, go for a dog walk, do whatever you want, and then we're going to come back to these later. Right, as you can probably hear from the background, I have just put my oven on. So the cookies have been in the freezer for about 80 minutes now. So what I'm gonna do is start my prep for when they're gonna go in the oven. So what I'm gonna do is cut a piece of baking paper, pop it on my tray, that way, because we cut that bit out earlier. I'm just gonna cut that bit off actually. Otherwise it's going to flap about. Now, the reason I'm doing this and not using the one in the freezer is because it's a little baking trick that if you put this in whilst your oven is preheating, then the grease-proof baking paper, whatever you want to call it, will get warm as well, which will mean that the bottom of the cookies will crisp a little bit and add that sort of chewy texture. So that's a good tip for cooking cookies and stuff like that. Pop this in whilst it's preheating and you'll get a nice texture from your cookies. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'll be back in 10 minutes when we're ready to cook. Okay, so I've just got mine out of the freezer. They're nice and smoky. They're little balls, you can pick them up. They're all good. So I've got 15, like I said earlier, but I'm only going to cook 12. So I'm just going to put the other ones in a Tupperware and pop them back in the freezer. And you can keep these in the freezer for up to 3 months before using them. So it's a great little thing if you might fancy a little snack or a little treat, just to keep these in your freezer. You can even just cook one at a time if you wanted to. Better do them in batches, but personal preference. So put these back in the freezer, and I'm going to put these, just spread them out a little bit more. You put these into my oven that has been preheated to 170 fan, which is gas mark 5, and I think about 180 on a non-fan oven. And I'm just going to put them in for 10 minutes and then get them out and let them cool for about 20 minutes minimum, but you can leave them a while. They stay nice and gooey for a few hours. I'm going to put these in. Right, so oven mitts. We're just going to get it out of the oven. Ooh, they look great. As you can see, some of them are still very wet and bouncy, but they cool and they're fine. So we're just going to leave those for about 20 minutes before we can eat them. I like to put a little drizzle of white chocolate on the top, vegan obviously. It just sort of separates the flavours because these are very chocolatey and very intense, so it just adds a slightly more sweet taste to it. So that's what I'm going to be doing after 20 minutes. But for now, we're just going to leave them, and you can eat them like this if you want to. But I'll be back when I'm doing the drizzling. As you can see there, look at that, the chocolate. Oh, I'm excited. Just melted down some white chocolate in the microwave, and I'm just going to drizzle it over, just with a spoon, over the top. There's one missing because my partner ate it. Couldn't wait for the drizzle. Don't worry if there's blobs. It happens. There we go. Now once that white chocolate is set, then it's all finished and you've got your cookies. Thanks for watching.